Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we are looking at Rabbit Tribal for EDH, specifically headlined by Baylen the Haymaker. So Baylen the Haymaker is a 3-mana Naya commander, red, green, and white. It's a legendary Rabbit Warrior 4/3, and it says tap 2 untapped tokens you control to add 1 mana of any color, tap 3 untapped tokens you control to draw a card, or tap 4 untapped tokens you control, put 3/1 counters on Baylen, and it gains trample until end of turn. So obviously, the first two abilities probably a lot better than this last one. Adding mana, drawing cards, better than just putting 3 counters on this guy. Also, you may notice there is nothing specifically about Baylen that makes it a Rabbit Tribal commander other than that it is a rabbit. And that is going to be one of the big downsides of this deck at the moment, which is that there just aren't that many rabbit creatures, period, much less good rabbit cards for EDH. So it was a bit of a stretch putting this deck together, and hopefully we get more rabbit support in the future if you're interested in this deck. And obviously Baylen could just be part of a token theme deck rather than specifically rabbit theme, but this is what I decided to go with here. So to begin with, we are obviously going to be the rabbit deck, and similar to any other tribal deck like squirrels, for example, we're going to be based on beating down the opponent. So we've got Beastmaster Ascension. Whenever creature you control attacks, put a quest counter on this, and then as long as there are 7 or more, the creatures get +5/+5. We've got Burrowguard Mentor. It gets power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control and has trample. Burke, Long Year of the Law, is a rabbit soldier. 6 mana, 4/4 vigilance. When it enters, put a +1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Whenever a creature you control with a +1 counter on an attacks, double the number of +1 counters on it. Caretaker's Talent. We can draw cards based on tokens. We're making tokens. This seems good. Plus, we can level it up to give +2/+2. Then we've got our other big pumps, Cathar's Crusade, Coat of Arms, and then a card that I think is shockingly underrun in EDH, Shared Animosity. 3 mana, red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. For my money, aside from Beastmaster Ascension, this is the best Anthem effect for how cheap it is in all of EDH, although it obviously does require that you are specifically a tribal deck. Then we've got Phineas Ace Archer, 2 mana, 2/2 vigilance reach. Whenever it attacks, you put a +1 counter on each other creature you control. That's a token or rabbit. Then if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, draw. Jacked Rabbit, it has Ravenous. Whenever it attacks, create a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to its power. Ravenous is attached to the X in its cost, and it basically means it enters with that many +1 counters, and if X is 5 or more, you draw. Regal Bunnicorn, power and toughness are equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. Valley Quest Caller, whenever 1 or more other rabbits and then other types you control enter. Scry 1, and other rabbits and other types get +1/+1. And Warren Warleader, 4 mana, 4/4, Offspring 2, you can copy it as a 1/1 by paying 2 when you cast it. Whenever you attack, choose 1, you create a 1/1 white rabbit that's tapped and attacking, or attacking creatures you control get +1/+1. Then onto our card draw, we've already seen Caretaker's Talent, and there's all the usual suspects like Esper Sentinel, One Ring. We're also going to play some additional ones. Tireless Tracker, obviously our commander cares about tokens, so anything that makes tokens is better than normal. Return of the Wild Speaker can draw cards equal to the greatest non-human power, but also gives non-humans +3/+3, so it can be used as an overrun. Cutzel, Malamet Exemplar, is a 3 mana 3/3. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, so it's a Grand Abolisher, and whenever 1 or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. We've got Toski, Harvestrite Host, 3 mana 3/3. Whenever it or another rabbit you control enters, target creature you control gets +1/0 until end of turn, then draw a card if it's the second time the ability is resolved. Skull Clamp, obviously, given all the tokens we're creating. We've got Scute Swarm and Academy Manufacture. Since we're making a bunch of tokens anyway, let's either make those tokens into more tokens, or just start making lots and lots of insects and then later on copies of Scute Swarm to win the game. Concordant Crossroads, this is going to be the way that we're going to overrun our opponents, so we need to make a bunch of creatures. We don't want to have to pass the turn when we do so. We want them to be able to just attack immediately, so Concordant Crossroads, here we go. Got all of our lands. Not too much to see here other than that we are playing an Oak Hollow Village. Green, tap, put a +1 counter on each type, but specifically rabbit you control that entered the battlefield this turn. Some protection, a bunch of ramp, which obviously are not rabbits, except for Claim Jumper. 3 mana 3/3 vigilance. When it enters, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search your library for a plains, put it on the battlefield. Tap, that's a plains, not a basic plains, so you can get dual lands with it. Then if an opponent controls more lands than you, repeat this process once. If you search your library, shuffle. So if an opponent controls more lands than you, you're going to get between 1 and 2 more lands. And Professional Facebreaker as a great way to hit our opponents and generate treasures. Also Tireless Provisioner, landfall, make a food or treasure. Anything that makes tokens, again with our commander, is just better than normal. Smothering Tithe, same thing. Then Season of the Burrow. Choose up to 5 paws. For 1 paw, we make a rabbit. For 2, exile target non-land permanent its controller draws. And for 3 paws, reanimate a permanent 3 or less with an indestructible counter on it. For our removal and bounce, we've added Aura Shards. We also have a Knight of Autumn in case we need to GSZ in a card, and since we're white, we can afford to run this instead of Rex Sage. Then we've got Collector Oof and Null Rod because most of our mana is not Mana Rocks and is in the form of creatures. Some tutors. Obviously, things like Gaia's Cradle are going to be great in this deck with all the tokens that we're creating, and we've got GSZ for all of its utility. And then a bunch of cards that didn't fit into any other category or which we're talking about here at the end. So we've got Kadira, Caller of the Small, a 3-mana 3/3 Trampler. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, for each token you control, create a 1/1 rabbit token. Ocelot Pride, which obviously just makes tokens itself. Preston the Vanisher is another playable rabbit. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't cast, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's an 0/1 white illusion, and you can pay 1 and a white and sack 5 illusions to exile target non-land permanent. Hop to it to create 3 rabbit tokens, and then we've got Seedborn Muse to untap our stuff, which is obviously great with Baylen, so that we can keep tapping tokens to get the abilities off of Baylen, presumably drawing cards. And then finally, Halo Fountain, which can make tokens or tap tokens to draw, or eventually, once we get enough creatures, we can untap 15 tapped creatures to win. But as I said before, our choices for playable rabbit cards in EDH are slim pickings, and Baylen is not necessarily even a rabbit tribal commander specifically. So there are potentially other ways to build this deck, especially with Baylen. Baylen could obviously be a token theme commander and not rabbit theme. But with that said, that is going to do it for Baylen the Haymaker, specifically rabbit tribal in EDH.